So the topic I chose was human trafficking in the world. So what is human trafficking? Well, it's defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, of a position of vulnerability, or the giving and or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control of another person for the purpose of exploitation. So basically, one person abusing another person's vulnerability to sell them into service. So, approximately 80% of trafficking involves like sexual exploitation of people, and 19% involves labor exploitation. So, basically, slavery. The types of exploitation include forced prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation, that's the 80%. Forced labor and services, that's the 19%. Slavery and similar practices, I think that's also included in the 19%. Involuntary servitude and removal of organs. And so globally, this is just an interesting fact. The average cost of a slave is only $90, which is pretty inexpensive if you think about the fact that you're buying someone's life, someone's servitude, which is just horrible and wrong and should have no cost, but $90 makes it cheap and affordable, which creates an even bigger problem as people are more likely to participate in human trafficking. Which causes how many people does it affect? So there are approximately 20 to 30 million slaves in the world today. And so according to the US State Department, 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across borders every year. International borders, mind you. So this is taking place on a global scale. And so 80% are female and half are children. So this kind of plays into the women being the largest people being affected by human trafficking because of the sexual exploitation. So the average teenage girl enters the sex trade in the ages from 12 to 14 years old, which is really, really young. So it's not only is it a girl, but it's also a child who's having their life stolen from them. And so they're runaway girls, most likely, who were sexually abused as children, which kind of caused them to fall prey to these predators. 14,500 to 17,500 people are trafficked into the US each year. So it's not like it's a problem outside of the US. It really does take place within the United States, which I don't think a lot of people realize when they're thinking about human trafficking. Like, it is a problem that affects our nation and as well as many other nations, pretty much the whole world. So it's the third largest international crime industry. And it generates a huge amount of profits, between 32 billion every year, and 15.5 of that, so pretty much half, is made up industrialized nations, so the United States, China, etc. They Again, the women and children represent the largest share of forced labor victims. So where is it? Everywhere. Interesting fact is that California harbors 3 of the FBI's 13 highest child sex trafficking areas in the nation: Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. And the National Human Trafficking Hotline receives more calls from Texas than any other state in the U.S. 50% of those calls are from Dallas-Fort Worth area. So you do have to recognize that there are really big problems with sex trafficking, again, in America and abroad. It affects so many people. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people to millions of people when you look globally. It really is everywhere and affects every city, every state, every country, the whole world. So I guess because women are the largest targets of human trafficking, that tends to be the form that is most talked about, because they are the majority of people who are trafficked for sexual exploitation. So as I pointed out in the third bullet point, they're not only used for just commercial sex, but they can also be used for domestic service. So being maids or basically slaves to people for not much money, and they're not making any money. This is also interesting because women play a huge part in being the perpetrators of human trafficking. And so what I learned basically this summer is that women who have been trafficked for sex, when they get too old to be sold, into slavery, their people use them as a way to draw in more women into human trafficking. And so they'll use, because young girls feel more comfortable around older women, they'll use this movement, oh, like, come look at this purse with me, or come shop with me, and then at which point they will be taken. They also can be used to run the whole set of rings, because they've been kind of brainwashed into this mentality that, like, this is okay, and like this is what is like meant to happen, when it is not that way at all, but that's what years of exploitation has like done to them. And so that's why women tend to make up a larger share of persons convicted for human trafficking offenses than other forms of crime. They represent more than half of the persons convicted, and so the men use them for sex and then use them as a way to run their businesses and to exploit more people. So, what this all means is that a global initiative is going to have to take place, because it is a problem in every country, whether it's on a minor scale or a major scale, like the United States has. So, it's going to need a global solutions, and it's going to need all of the countries coming together to create a way to solve this, because they're more powerful when they all work together to solve this problem. It's also important because there are several nations who do not make any effort to help the problem of human trafficking, because it is a large part of their economy, and without it, their economy would be struggling. Um, Maybe not with such like malicious intent as to and keep human trafficking around necessarily, but it doesn't. Sometimes there is corruption within the government that helps people keep things in place that help human trafficking, so that way the economy stays better and that there is a market for it. And so it's really going to take all the nations coming together and like convince nations convincing other nations of the importance of this matter, because it is affecting a millions of people every day, and more people being brought into it every year, and it's it should be completely eradicated, as no one should ever have to be forced into labor for no money, and be forced. It should be um, it needs to be completely eradicated, and the only way to do that is for there to be a committee of a representative from every country coming together to create a solution on how to ban and to minimalize the amount of human trafficking done around the world.